Hello, History 236. This is John Walker Davis, and I apologize for not posting something on Monday. I did that on purpose because there's still a number of folks who are not up to where they need to be, which is regretful. And that's partially my fault, and it's partially problems that nothing could have actually helped the situation because Dr. Cook's wife had a major health problem, so this class got started slowly. Having said that, you've already had 2 exams. You'll have a 3rd exam, which will be an exam/final exam, and it will include information from several chapters. So it's not going to be specific chapters, it's going to be specific events and specific moments that are vitally important for you to understand the second half of American history. And I'm going to post something else to help y'all, to help everyone out with that, but it's going to focus on major moments that coalesce eventually with the second civil rights movement in the 1960s. And the major passage of some major legislation that outlaws Jim Crow and enforces the Voting Rights Act. Now, having said that, in the meantime, from 1890 until the 60s, you still have African Americans throughout the country working to improve the economic, social, and political reality for African Americans. And so some of the important moments and individuals that we must learn are individuals like W.E.B. Du Bois, who's the individual responsible for the NAACP. And then we focus on military moments like the Spanish-American War and World War I and World War II, and how African Americans devote themselves to contributing to the war effort, but yet when they return home, they still reside in a segregated society. And so I will give you some very specific test understanding questions and individuals. So look to that along with some other objectives that I'll post today or tomorrow. In the meantime, some of you've got to finish your test because Friday, the 27th, is the last day to drop this class. And there are several of y'all that have never taken one exam. So that's a problem. So by Friday, you're pretty much done unless I hear from you. So communicate with me. If you need a test opened, I will open it for you. If you need help with something, all you have to do is send me an email. I do receive text, but for some reason my text does not always work properly. So send an email. And I have a lot of students, so I get a lot of phone calls. So if I don't answer the phone, leave a message on my cell. Don't leave a message on my office phone because it does not always work. So I have a lot to do and only a few days to do it. So communicate, look for the new objectives, read about the Spanish-American War and African Americans, read about World War II, and read about the Great Migration northward. And that's not just to one particular region. You have African Americans going to Chicago, Philadelphia, and New York, and various other places. And read about African Americans during World War I, and read about African Americans in the 1920s, and the Harlem Renaissance. Read about Marcus Garvey and the Pan-African movement, and read about different trajectories that different African American leaders took to tackle the inequities that African Americans endured throughout America. It was not just a Southern thing, it was an American thing. No matter where you lived in the country, African Americans still endured a second-class citizenship. Having said that, there were numerous African Americans that became quite wealthy and succeeded. So it's important to understand a number of those individuals. And it's important to understand how by the time we get to the Great Depression, that there's going to be a major political shift as African Americans move away from the party of Lincoln, the Republican Party, to the party of FDR. Having said that, FDR never went as far as he could have as far as helping African Americans. So as we go from the Spanish-American War, World War I, the Harlem Renaissance, and a flowering of African American culture, by the time we get to World War II, it's a major transitional moment. And it's going to lead to what's called the Double V campaign. And that's something you really need to know, because African Americans, once again, just like they did during the Spanish-American War, the Great War, they commit themselves to upholding American values, even though those American values are not granted to them. But during that moment, during the war, this notion of the Double V campaign, which simply means that the soldiers commit themselves to defeating Hitler and defeating Japan and other imperialist regimes. But the Double V represents this. We're going to defeat these societies in Europe and in Asia, Southeast Asia, but when we come back home, we're going to have another victory against segregation, against Jim Crow, against individuals' children not able to attend a decent school. So that's going to launch a whole nother important African American civil rights moment, because it's going to be the individuals, not every individual, but a lot of those individuals who come out of World War II will become major leaders. That combined with the military leaders, combined with the religious leaders, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and a number of others, that launches a whole nother era in African Americans' demand for the Constitution to be upheld, and that the rights contained in the Constitution are granted to all African Americans. So that's important. And I know I'm throwing a lot out there, but there are these particular moments you have to understand. You don't have to memorize every individual, every riot, every moment, but you need to understand these transitional, specific, epic moments that change life for Americans. Not just African Americans, but for all Americans. And it's important to emphasize that throughout this whole time, African Americans are an important foundational element that sustains the country. At the same time, they're being held in a position that's not equal to other Americans, or Americans that do not have the same disqualifications applied to them. So keep all that in mind. If you have any specific questions, I'll be glad to answer them, and I'll post some more information. But if you haven't taken your exams, take your exams. If you haven't communicated with me, communicate with me. I mean, the semester's over on the 3rd, so you need to make a decision today, Thursday, whether or not you're going to drop the class or keep the class. So if there's anything I can do to help you out, send me an email. That's better than calling me. And it's better than texting me. My texting apparently sucks for some reason. But I've talked too long. Listen to this and communicate with me. Be well and be safe.